Hey, Shalom, Shalom, Shalom. This is Naaman with the DC Camp, Branch of Great Millstone, back for another video. But first and foremost, call halal Yahweh, by Hashem Yahushua, by Hashem Rikahakwadash, and of course, once again, double honors go out to the apostles, bishops, and elders of Great Millstone, who rule well. Salutations also go out to the fellow Akim that are out there on the highways and byways, pushing the truth, aided by the numerous videos that are pushed out there to help wake up the remaining hopefully elect, all right? These go out through all the earth, all right? And they're for edification. That's what we do here at Great Millstone. And as you see the title here, Divers Found Pharaoh's Army Beneath the Red Sea. The discovery left Egyptologists frozen. Now you have to understand what's at stake here, and it's going to go into that towards the end, all right? Because there's a whole lot of lies that have been told. All right, you have to understand this so-called white man, these Edomites, that's the biblical nation that they are of, all right, they want to be seen as God, really. When you really go into it, they want themselves to be seen as the ultimate authority on the earth. All right, you mean to tell me there's something greater than myself? That's what we're dealing with. All right, a pompous ass on the highest order. All right, so again, this is the site Quantera, and let's go ahead and get this out of the way. This is the copyright disclaimer under Section 107 of the Copyright Act of 1976. Allowance is made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, and research, all of which I am doing. Fair use is a use permitted by copyright statutes that might otherwise be infringing. Non-profit, educational, or personal use tips the balance in favor of fair use. Fair use, fair use. All right, so let's go ahead and let this play. This is a little over 29 minutes. Some interesting information in here. I think there is a, disagreement as to the location. But let's just go ahead and roll this footage.
If there were chariots found in the Red Sea, it would probably have something to do with the crossing of the sea.
There is a battlefield at the bottom of the Red Sea. We're not talking about a single shipwreck. We're talking about an entire Egyptian army. A recent high-tech dive has just uncovered what amateur explorers have claimed for years. Hundreds of chariot wheels, horse skeletons, and human remains perfectly preserved in coral.
Is there any physical evidence on the seabed? Yes, there is. And we have some examples. Skeletons of humans, skeleton parts of horses and bulls, chariot wheels.
This finding doesn't just support an ancient story, it threatens to rewrite it. And get this, Egyptologists are completely silent. The implications of this find are staggering, and the story behind it is even crazier.
Really?
The $10 million secret. So here's the deal. In late 2024, a small, highly secretive team of divers, engineers, and underwater archaeologists launched a private expedition. This wasn't a university-funded project you read about in a boring journal. This was a quiet, covert operation funded by private backers to the tune of over $10 million. They were equipped with technology that most archaeological teams can only dream of. Advanced side-scan sonar, military-grade remotely operated vehicles, ROVs, with high-definition 4K cameras and hypersensitive magnetometers. They weren't just looking for old pots or a stray anchor, they were looking for something specific. Something that mainstream science insisted did not exist.
Patricia Heaton looks great at 67. Here is her #1 secret. Regular milk or oat milk?
Oh, regular milk.
Sometimes these commercials, you could swear that they're watching this and timing it. Let's insert this now, But let me say this. Videos like this are a faith booster, all right? And also, I must state that we don't need this. We don't need the so-called white man's All right, validation. All right, this is Hebrews 11. In fact, let me get. All right. Yeah, this is Hebrews 11:1. Now, faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. All right. Hey, if the scriptures say it so, then it's so. All right. Now, this, hey, like I said, this is a faith booster. This, all right, lets us know that, hey, these things are there, yeah, but this doesn't affect us overall, our faith. All right. For by it the elders obtain a good report. Through faith we understand that the worlds were framed by the word of the Most High, so that things which are seen were not made of things which do appear. All right, I just thought I'd get that out the way. Yeah, because ultimately, yeah, hey, it's good to, you know, visually see these things. The same with Mount Ararat, Noah's Ark.
They were looking for the lost army of the Pharaoh. For decades, rumors and amateur reports had pointed to a very specific spot in the Red Sea's Gulf of Aqaba. The stories, often dismissed as fantasy, told of coral-encrusted chariot wheels, scattered bones, and the physical remnants of the Egyptian army from the biblical Exodus. For just as long, mainstream Egyptology and archaeology had laughed off these claims. They called it pseudoscience, a religious hoax, and wishful thinking. But this new team had a map. It was a map based on those old, ridiculed claims, and they had the technology to see what no one else could, or perhaps what no one else wanted to see. They started their search in a wide grid. For days, the sonar pulsed into the deep, scanning the seabed. Then the sonar operator saw it. Strange, symmetrical anomalies on his screen. These shapes were not natural rock formations. They were round, precise, and most chillingly, they were arranged in a long, linear trail. The team was stunned. The shapes looked exactly like wheels, hundreds of them. They deployed the ROV, a small submarine robot, sending it down into the dark, cold water hundreds of feet below the surface. The sub's high-powered lights cut through the gloom. At first, there was nothing but sand and rock. And then, suddenly, there it was, emerging from the sand, a perfectly round shape, completely covered in coral. It was, without a doubt, a wheel, an ancient spoked chariot wheel. As the ROV glided forward, its robotic arm brushing away the silt, another came into view, and another, and another. It was a debris field, a massive one. The site stretched for nearly a mile and a half. This was it. The team knew they had to go down themselves. This was too big to just observe through a camera. Elite deep-sea divers, many of them ex-military, prepared for a difficult and dangerous dive. As they descended into the silent deep, the sheer scale of the cataclysm became terrifyingly clear. This was not a single shipwreck.
Think about that. The debris field was a mile and a half. Now when things, well, you're going to see later on as they, roll out the animation. But you got to think about that. All right. When all that water came back, all right, nowhere for these devils to go. All right. Just think about that. And, with water and everything, how things, settle.
This was a military catastrophe, frozen in time. The sea floor was a war zone. It was littered with the remains of a fleeing or perhaps charging army. They saw wheels with 4 spokes, 6 spokes, and even 8 spokes. This detail is a massive wow factor. Why? Because these specific designs match perfectly the different types of chariots used by the Egyptian army during the New Kingdom period.
They match perfectly, all right? Like we've often said, from the elder apostle on down, you study secular history of things match up with the scriptures, all right?
The 4-spoked wheels were older, but the 6 and 8-spoked wheels were the new, high-tech, stable designs used by elite warriors and the pharaoh himself. Finding them all jumbled together was a snapshot of the entire Egyptian chariot corps. But it wasn't just wheels. They found twisted metal fragments that looked like axles. They found what appeared to be the tangled rectangular remains of the chariot cabs themselves, now just piles of corroded bronze and petrified wood, all fused to the seafloor by centuries of relentless coral growth. What most people don't realize is that the divers reported an overwhelming, eerie feeling of dread. They were swimming through an underwater graveyard, and then they found the bones. Tangled within the chariot debris, just as the old reports had claimed, were bone shards. Hundreds, possibly thousands of them. Some were clearly animal, the skulls, ribs, and femurs of horses, exactly where they would be if they were still harnessed to the chariots. But others were unmistakably human.
Hi, I'm JT and I made Result Hunter, the search engine for conservatives. Let me just tell you what it does. First of all, big tech.
Spines, pelvic bones, and fragments of skulls all mixed together in a chaotic, terrible jumble. This wasn't just an equipment dump. This was the final watery resting place of hundreds, maybe thousands, of elite soldiers and their animals who all perished in a single, sudden, and violent event. The crazy part? One of the divers, sweeping a high-powered light over a mound of coral, caught a faint, unnatural glimmer. Beneath the crust, something was shining.
Just think about that. This is spiritually Sodom and Egypt. All right. Think of that wall of water you just saw there. Let me go back a little bit. Now imagine this being fire.
Of elite soldiers and their animals who all perished in a single, sudden, and violent event. The crazy part? One of the divers, sweeping a high-powered light over a mound of coral, caught a faint, unnatural glimmer. Beneath the crust, something was shining, a dull, unmistakable golden sheen. This matched the most incredible, most dismissed claim of all, that among the Army's wreckage was a single gold-plated chariot wheel, perhaps belonging to a high-ranking general or even the pharaoh. They couldn't touch it. The coral had locked it in place. To try and remove it would be to destroy it. The team documented everything. They took thousands of high-resolution...
Come on, we've seen enough CSI shows, to know that coral, it preserves things. It preserves the evidence, all right? Especially when it's, harder substances.
Photos and hours of high-definition video. They knew what they had found would send shockwaves through the world. They had found physical, tangible evidence that seemed to support one of the oldest and most foundational stories in human history. But here's the catch. This discovery, as monumental as it was, also opened up a massive can of worms. It challenged everything mainstream Egyptology had taught for the last 100 years. And that is why, when the initial findings were quietly shared with certain academics and institutions, the reaction was not excitement. It was silence. A cold, hard, frozen silence. But the discovery was just the first piece. The location was the second. A bridge at the bottom of the sea. So why this exact spot? What's so special about this random patch of the Gulf of Aqaba? Yeah, about that. This is where the story gets even more incredible. The location of the dive was not random. It was chosen because it's one of the most unique and bizarre underwater features on the entire planet.
Why?
The Gulf of Aqaba, which separates the Sinai Peninsula from modern-day Saudi Arabia, is known for being extremely deep. We're talking about a massive underwater canyon that in most places plunges down to 5,000 or even 6,000 feet. Ooh. That's over a mile straight down. It is a massive, impassable trench. Trying to cross it with an army of chariots or even on foot would be completely impossible. It is a sheer cliff of dark water, except for one very specific place. Right where the divers found the army, there is a massive flat land bridge that spans the entire Gulf. It's an underwater plateau stretching nearly 10 miles from the shore of a massive beach in Egypt called Nuweiba to the shore of Saudi Arabia. And get this, on either side of this bridge, the seabed plunges dramatically into those 5,000 foot deep abysses. But the bridge itself, it's relatively shallow. Now, shallow is a relative term. It's still about 900 feet deep at its deepest point, but compared to the mile-deep canyons on either side, it is a raised pathway. The sonar maps show it clearly, a distinct, massive underwater road 10 miles long and several miles wide. This underwater pathway is the only place in the entire 100-mile length of the Gulf of Aqaba that an ancient group of people could have even attempted to cross. What most people don't realize is that this geographical feature is a perfect one-to-one match for the ancient.
Got Midian to the right of it. We all know the story about what happened with the Midianites.
Story. The biblical account describes the fleeing Israelites being trapped against the sea with mountains on either side and the Pharaoh's army closing in. The location at Nuweiba Beach is a perfect fit. It's a massive, sprawling beach, but it's completely walled in on either side by steep, impassable mountains. The only way in is from the west, and the only way out is forward into the sea, and right there at that exact spot is the underwater bridge. This geography is a massive wow factor because it's a detail that ancient writers could not possibly have known about. You can't see it from the surface. You can only find it with advanced sonar. Yet the story they told points directly to this one-of-a-kind location. The geography itself acts as a massive silent piece of evidence, suggesting that something historic and catastrophic happened right here. A corridor can also be a trap. The linear distribution of the artifacts, the mile-and-a-half-long trail of wheels and bones, follows the path of this submerged bridge. It looks exactly like a group that was caught in the middle of the passage. This location also explains why the artifacts are still there. The 900-foot depth protected them from storms, ship anchors, and looters for millennia. And the unique currents created by the deep canyons on either side have trapped silt and sediment on the plateau. This sediment slowly buried the artifacts. And of course, the warm, clear water is perfect for coral growth. The coral has acted like a natural concrete. It grew on the hard, solid surfaces of the chariots, the wood, the bronze, the leather.
I was saying earlier.
Over thousands of years, the wood rotted away and the metal corroded, but the coral held its shape. The divers weren't just finding wheels, they were finding wheel-shaped coral. They are essentially fossils of chariots. Without this specific geography and biology, any remnants would have been scattered and dissolved into nothing centuries ago. This land bridge, this perfect crossing, also explains the scale of the find. An entire army with hundreds of chariots, horses, and soldiers forced into this narrow 10-mile bottleneck would be completely and totally vulnerable. When the disaster struck, there was no escape. They couldn't go left. They couldn't go right. They were trapped.
Think about this. The hatred you would have to even go into some shit like that. The hatred you have to have for people. Come on now. Now we all saw I'm assuming the majority of us saw the movie The Ten Commandments back in the day. I don't think that does it justice here. Alright, but it's a good representation. And you're still gonna... Wow. You know? But think about how that relates today. You know, as it says in the scriptures, the Pharaoh refused to let them go. Same as today. You're wondering why you're not going to get reparations. I mean, aside from the fact that, hey, who are you dealing with here? He's going to make every excuse, all right, to try not to provide you a means to get the hell up out of here. This is done on purpose. The same as before with ancient Pharaoh, we built treasure cities. I've said in many of my videos, you know, they make money and exploit us, well, in so many different ways, you know, to make money off of us. The literal goose that lays the golden egg. You think they want to get rid of that? Are you crazy? No, it's going to have to be forcibly done. All right.
This tragic bottleneck explains the massive concentration of artifacts. It's a silent underwater testament to a cataclysmic event. The fact that this terrain is so unique also helps debunk one of the main skeptical arguments. Critics often say, oh, it's just a random shipwreck. But here's the deal. This isn't a shipwreck. It's hundreds of military chariots, all from the same time period, all found in a linear path on the only plausible land crossing in the entire Gulf. That's not a coincidence. That's a scene. This unique path wasn't found by accident. One man claimed it was there all along. The vindication of a madman? This entire incredible story, the secret expedition, the sonar maps, the frozen Egyptologists, it all goes back to one man. A man who was not a professor, not a famous archaeologist, and not part of the academic elite. His name was Ron Wyatt, and for decades, the entire world thought he was a complete crank. So here's the deal with Ron Wyatt. He was a nurse anesthetist from Tennessee. He was also a passionate, deeply religious, self-taught biblical adventurer. Driven by an unshakable, literal belief that the stories in the Bible were physical, locatable history, he spent his life and his own money trying to find the physical proof. He was the definition of an amateur, an outsider, and that's putting it lightly. In the 1970s, Wyatt became obsessed with
Again, notice the parallels as it pertains to us out there on the highways and byways. Everybody thinks we're, idiots and, liars and whatever else, with a few expletives thrown in there. Salaki. But here it is. This guy was, a layman at best. He wasn't, one of these high-profile academics, Yes, we went to Harvard and Yale and Cambridge and Oxford and, all that shit. And, of course they dismissed him. He's just who is he? Who is this guy? They don't understand. That's, perfect example of Acts 4th chapter. They weren't considered, going to the establishments, schools, and learning from your enemy. No, they had the Spirit on them. All right, let's continue.
Finding the true Red Sea crossing. He dismissed the traditional Reed Sea theories, small marshy lakes in northern Egypt. He followed the biblical clues, which he believed pointed to a massive body of water deep enough to drown an army. His search led him to the Gulf of Aqaba, and specifically to the massive mountain-locked beach of Nuweiba. He reasoned with simple logic that if this was the spot where the Israelites were trapped, then this must be the spot where the sea parted. And if that was true, then the remains of Pharaoh's army must be at the bottom of the Gulf, right on that underwater land bridge. So in 1978, armed with basic scuba gear, a small...
Just briefly touched on it and went, into something else earlier, but when I said there's some dispute about the location, the dispute being, what was it, the Reed Sea, just to explain where my head was at earlier when I said that. Here we go.
Small boat and a lot of faith, he did something no one else had bothered to do. He dived down. What he claimed to find was exactly what the new $10 million expedition just verified. He reported seeing coral-encrusted chariot wheels. He even claimed to have recovered a hub from one. He took blurry, grainy underwater photos, which were easy to dismiss as interestingly shaped coral. But he didn't stop there. On later dives, he claimed to have found more. He reported finding human bones and horse bones all mixed in with the chariot parts. And he made his most explosive claim of all. He said he had found and filmed the legendary golden chariot wheel gleaming faintly beneath the coral. When Ron Wyatt presented his findings, the academic world didn't just ignore him. They ridiculed him. They tore him apart. He was labeled a fraud, a pseudoscience peddler, and a religious zealot who was just seeing what he wanted to see.
Wow, get that. The pseudoscience. The pseudoscientists calling someone else a pseudoscientist. Wow.
Egyptologists and archaeologists were frozen in a state of complete and total dismissal. And get this, Wyatt's other claim...
Again, but why? Why so much vitriol and to someone? Why not just, we'll investigate it and, whatever. No, because you got to understand, this is a threat. This is a threat, all right?
Claims made him an even bigger target.
Commercial. Another commercial. God dog it.
I mean, the easiest way to test a nonstick is to cook an egg. Now look, check out that glide. This is the first nonstick made with zero.
He also claimed to have found Noah's Ark, the true location of Mount Sinai in Saudi Arabia right across from Nuweiba, the ashes of the red heifer, and even most fantastically, the Ark of the Covenant, hidden in a cave under Jerusalem. To the mainstream scientific community, this wasn't research. It was a fantasy-fueled treasure hunt. His Red Sea claims were thrown out along with everything else. For over 40 years, the site was dismissed as a myth, a conspiracy, and nothing but coral and wishful thinking. But here's the catch. Ron Wyatt passed away in 1999, his claims still almost universally mocked. But he left behind his research, he left his maps, he left the exact coordinates of the underwater land bridge and the debris field he had found. The secret high-tech expedition in 2024? They weren't diving blind, they were following Ron Wyatt's map, and their $10 million sonar and high-definition cameras were verifying one by one the impossible claims that the nurse from Tennessee had been making all along. The sonar...
Long after he'd passed away. All right. Wow. Let's roll that back. Hold on.
High-tech expedition in 2024? They weren't diving blind, they were following Ron Wyatt's map, and their $10 million sonar and high-definition cameras were verifying one by one the
25 years
impossible
after he passed
claims
away
that the nurse from Tennessee had been making all along. The sonar confirmed the land bridge, the ROVs confirmed the wheels, the 4, 6, and 8-spoked wheels, just as he said. The divers confirmed the bones, and they even saw the glint of gold that Wyatt had reported. This is the core of the controversy. The experts who dismissed Wyatt for decades are now faced with high-tech data that proves he was, at the very least, right about the existence of a massive, ancient underwater debris field. The discovery is forcing a reevaluation of a man everyone had agreed was a fool.
I bet
and
it
it's
is.
forcing a terrifying reevaluation of how this impossible event could have ever happened. Because the how is where the theories get really wild. Chasing a stolen superweapon. This is the big question. If there's an army at the bottom of the sea, how did it get there? The ancient story says the sea parted, the Israelites walked across on dry ground, and the waters then collapsed on the pursuing Egyptian army. Mainstream science says that's impossible, but the evidence is there. So what really happened in the Gulf of Aqaba? This is where the theories get wild. Wild theory. Number 1, the volcano tsunami. This is a big one. What if the miracle was actually a perfectly timed natural disaster? Around 3,500 years ago, a massive volcano on the Greek island of Santorini, then called Thera, exploded. This was one of the largest volcanic eruptions in human history. It was a planet-altering event. This mega eruption hundreds of miles away would have created a massive tsunami that radiated across the Mediterranean. But what most people don't realize is that tsunamis have a famous, terrifying signature, the drawback. Before the giant wave hits, the sea recedes. The water is pulled back suddenly and dramatically, often for miles, exposing the seabed. To an ancient person who had never seen this, it would look like a miracle.
Okay.
The sea literally parting. So, here's the theory. The Israelites are trapped at Nuweiba. The Thera eruption causes a massive tidal drawback in the Red Sea. The water pulls back, exposing the 10-mile land bridge. It's a miracle. They run across. The Egyptian army, seeing their path, charges after them onto the exposed, muddy seabed. But here's the catch. The drawback is just the first part. The second part is the wave returning. Just as the Egyptian army with its heavy wheel-bogged chariots reaches the middle of the Gulf, the tsunami hits. A wall of water hundreds of feet high roars back into the Gulf, annihilating the entire army in an instant. It's a scientific explanation that fits the story almost perfectly. The timing, the parting, and the collapse of the walls of water. Wild theory number 2, the Ark of the Covenant. This theory is even wilder, and it connects directly back to Ron Wyatt. Remember how Wyatt claimed to find both the chariot wheels and the Ark of the Covenant? What if those two discoveries are linked? What if the Israelites weren't just fleeing with their families? What if they had just stolen Egypt's most powerful secret?
What?
A lot of non-mainstream theories propose that the Ark of the Covenant wasn't just a religious box. They say it was a piece of advanced, lost technology, a massive electrical capacitor, an energy source, or even a weapon. So, here's the new story. The Israelites, led by Moses, who was raised in the Pharaoh's court and had access to its secrets, steal this powerful device. The Pharaoh is enraged. He's not just chasing to get his slaves back, he's chasing to get his super weapon back. The Israelites are trapped at the sea. The Egyptian army closes.
You hear this? The Ark of the Covenant was oh my goodness, I'm trying to keep from laughing. That was an Egyptian super weapon. Now that's a first for me hearing this. When I did this, when I was making, getting ready to make this video. Never heard that one before. I never heard anything remotely saying that the Ark of the Covenant, was of the Egyptians. Never heard that before. Wow, they're really grasping at straws, as the saying goes. They're really reaching. All right. Wow.
So Moses uses the device. The Ark of the Covenant unleashes an unknown force, maybe a localized gravity field, maybe a massive energy pulse that pushes the water apart, creating the dry path. The Israelites cross. The Egyptians, blinded by rage, charge in after them. Once they are all in the kill box, Moses, or the Ark itself, switches off the device. The walls of water held back by this unknown energy collapse. The army is destroyed. This theory is wild, but it answers a lot of questions. It explains the pillar of fire and cloud, the energy signature of the Ark. It explains why...
Okay, this is Exodus 13. Let me get it real quick. But you forget this. You don't... See, this is where it says the Most High is not in his thoughts. All right. This is Exodus 13 and 20. It says, and they took their journey, this is the Israelites, from Succoth, and encamped in Etham, in the edge of the wilderness. And the Most High went before them by day in a pillar of a cloud, all right, to lead them the way, and by night in a pillar of fire to give them light, meaning a chariot, to go by day and night, all right. And he took not away the pillar of the cloud by day, nor the pillar of the fire by night from before the people. Now, when we go to the next chapter, hold on. All right, what does it say? Crossing the Red Sea. All right. All right. Let's see how far I want to go down on this. Well, let's start at the top. All right. Exodus 14 and 1. And the Most High Yahweh spake unto Moses, speak unto the children of Israel that they turn and encamp before Pihahiroth, between Migdol and the sea, over against Baal Zephon, before it shall ye encamp by the sea. For Pharaoh will say of the children of Israel, they are entangled in the land, the wilderness hath shut them in. All right, like backs to the wall. All right, remember the video said that the only way back out was go back west. All right, and the other option was going into the sea. He says, and I will harden Pharaoh's heart, that he shall follow after them, and I will be honored upon Pharaoh and upon all his hosts, that the Egyptians may know that I am the Most High. And they did so, which answers the statement that I had posed earlier about, well, why did you, seeing all of that, continue? It says here, because the Most High hardened Pharaoh's heart. All right. All right. And it was told the king of Egypt that the people fled, And the heart of Pharaoh and of his servants was turned against the people. And they said, why have we done this, that we have let Israel go from serving us? Them plagues were tearing that ass up. All right. And he made ready his chariot and took his people with him. And he took 600 chosen chariots and all the chariots of Egypt and captains over every one of them. Let's see. All right. And the Most High Yahweh hardened the heart of Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and he pursued after the children of Israel. All right, and the children of Israel went out with a high hand, but the Egyptians pursued after them all the horses and chariots of Pharaoh and his horsemen and his army, and overtook them encamping by the sea, beside Pihahiroth, before Baal-zephon. Okay. And when Pharaoh drew nigh, the children of Israel lifted up their eyes, and behold, the Egyptians marched after them, and they were so afraid. And the children of Israel cried out unto the Most High. And they said unto Moses, because there were no graves in Egypt, hast thou taken us away to die in the wilderness? Wherefore hast thou dealt thus with us, to carry us forth out of Egypt? Is not this the word we did tell thee in Egypt, saying, let us alone, that we may serve the Egyptians? See, that's that mindset, that slave mentality. Jake still has that to this day. And, you know, when you learn about, you know, Harriet Tubman, you know, and you have to the question was, well, why was she, you know, armed? There's the obvious answer, and then there's the one that, well, you're not taught. And that is this self-same attitude right here. You're out there and, you know, you still got to deal with this motherfucker wanting to go back. Well, if he does so, you're going to be compromised. So it's like, well, either you continue on or this is where you lay permanently. So it had been better for us to serve the Egyptians than that we should die in the wilderness. And Moses said unto the people, fear ye not, stand still and see the salvation of the Most High Yahweh, which he will shew to you this day. For the Egyptians whom ye have seen today, ye shall see them again no more forever. Damn. All right, back to the video.
Pharaoh would risk his entire elite army, and it explains the supernatural power of the event. Wild theory number 3, lost acoustic technology. This one is straight out of science fiction. Some theorists propose that
just refuse to give the Most High the credit. Look at that. They coming up with all things. I'm surprised it didn't say aliens. All right.
ancient civilizations, maybe even a pre-Egyptian one, understood the power of sound and frequency. What if the parting of the sea wasn't a miracle or a volcano, but a technological event? What if the staff of Moses was some kind of tonal resonator, a piece of lost tech that, when activated, created a specific sound frequency? A frequency so powerful it could literally push water, creating a parting through acoustic levitation. This sonic weapon would have held the water back only to be deactivated once the army was inside. Whether it was a volcano, a super weapon, or lost technology, all these theories point to the same conclusion. Something happened in that gulf. Something powerful enough to wipe an army off the face of the earth, leaving its remains to be fossilized in coral, waiting to be found. But if the proof is there, why the silence? What are they hiding? This brings us to the core of the title, the very heart of this entire mystery. Why are Egyptologists and mainstream archaeologists frozen? It's not from awe, it's not from excitement. Nope. It's from a combination of pure academic disbelief, professional self-preservation, and perhaps a genuine, terrifying...
What? Professional self-preservation. In other words, we've been invested in all this archaeology and all our sciences and other fields, you know, and we've tried to get away from this, what they considered a myth. But now you say there's evidence? Well, that's going to challenge everything that we've ever said, we've ever done. All the books that we've printed, all the people that we've taught are bullshit. What are we going to say?
Fear of what this discovery actually means for the world. So, here's the deal. For over 100 years, the consensus among almost all secular Egyptologists is that the Exodus, as described in the Bible, did not happen. Period. At least not on the impossible scale the story claims. They teach this in every university, from Cairo to Harvard. It's written in every textbook. It is the dogma. They argue very logically that there is zero archaeological evidence in the Sinai Desert for 2 million people, a population the size of a modern city wandering for 40 years. They demand, where are the campsites? Where are the mass graves? Where is the pottery? They argue correctly that there is no mention in any Egyptian hieroglyph, no record on any papyrus of their entire army, their most valuable military asset, their charioteers being destroyed in a single catastrophic day.
Let's look up that word. Let's look up that word. For those of you that don't know what it means. Dogma. All right. All right, a doctrine or a corpus of doctrines relating to matters such as morality and faith set forth in an authoritative manner by a religion. That's not what I'm looking for. Let's see. Hold on. Let's see. Let's see. Let's go to dictionary.com. Come on here. All right, what's taking so long here? What's going on? What the hell? That's weird. Oh, well, that'll explain it. Like I said, I have this wandering signal here. So I could bear with me here. All right, let's see if this will. Come on. Come on, come on, come on, come on, come on. Oh, let me move this around. Hold on. Come on now. There we go. Okay, let's see. Let's see what we got here. I might have to pause it here. Hold on. Trying to see if it'll. I really don't want to. God dog it. The heck is going All right, there we go. Let's see. Let's try that again. All right. Let's just start over. All right. Let me make sure. Slovakia once again. Hey, it's just something I have to contend with, but hey, we'll get through it. Let's try again. Come on. This is weird. There we go. All right. Let's try dictionary.com again. Once again, I apologize. All right. Dogma. A settled or established opinion, but by who? Belief or principle. All right. A settled or established opinion. This is what has them, this is why they're worried, because all that shit that they taught, we don't believe in that anyway. You know, you got to understand who you're dealing with. Teachings, simple as that. Doesn't mean it's the truth, not by a long shot. But this is what we're taught. This is therefore what is, because basically I'm white and therefore it's right. All right, back to the video, finish it out.
The entire foundation of modern Egyptology, its timelines, its king lists, its understanding of the 18th dynasty's power, its history, it's all built on a framework that does not include this event. It's a framework that cannot include this event. To them, it's a myth. A powerful story of cultural foundation, but a myth nonetheless. Now suddenly, a team of divers following the map of a man, Ron Wyatt, who everyone in the serious academic world dismissed as a crank, a charlatan, a religious dreamer, they find a massive underwater debris field. A field that doesn't just hint at the story, it matches it perfectly. We're not talking about one or two broken pots, we're talking about hundreds of chariots. We're talking about wheels, axles, and cabinets scattered across the seafloor. And not just any chariots. The specific 6-spoke and 8-spoke designs used only by the Egyptian army of the 18th dynasty. The exact right time period. At the exact right location, a massive natural land bridge cutting across the deep Gulf, with the exact kind of geography the story implies. If this site is real, then the experts were wrong, and that's putting it lightly.
Exactly.
This discovery doesn't just add a new chapter to history, it tears out all the old ones. It would mean that the ancient texts were not just stories, but accurate, literal, historical accounts. A tenured professor who has built their entire 30-year career, their entire reputation, on the Exodus as myth theory cannot suddenly turn around and say, oops, guess that nurse from Tennessee was right all along. Their career would be over. Their life's work would be meaningless. Every book they published would be fiction. Every student they mentored would have been taught a lie. So they are frozen. They are silent. The safest thing to do is to ignore it, to attack the source, to call it unverified, pseudoscience, or misinterpreted. They will argue it's just a shipwreck graveyard from many different eras, even though the evidence points to a single massive chaotic event. They will say the coral-encrusted wheels are just coral formations, or modern debris, even when the shapes are unmistakable. They will demand impossible standards of proof for this one site while accepting far less for their own pet theories.
There you go.
They are gatekeepers, and this discovery is a...
And that's it in a nutshell, gatekeepers. All right, but the shit that they put out there, it takes far less to try to prove that. But like he said, they want impossible proof when it comes to the scriptures.
Battering ram at their gates. They will never ever give an inch, because giving an inch means their entire ivory tower comes crumbling down. But the wild theory here is that it goes deeper. What if it goes deeper than just a few dozen academic careers? What if this is a global conspiracy? Think about it. Really, think. If this site is proven beyond any doubt to be the remains of the Pharaoh's army, it would be seen as physical, tangible, scientific proof of one of the foundational miracles of the Old Testament. In a world full of religious and political tension, what would that do? It would elevate...
And that would mean the Israelites. They're real? You mean there really are Israelites? And then you'd have to ask the question, are those people currently in that land? Are they the same people? See?
One set of religious beliefs backed by physical proof above all others. It would validate the claims of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam in one fell swoop. That's not just academically disruptive, that's geopolitically disruptive. It's an earthquake. What about other world religions? What about purely secular, atheistic governments who have built their entire state on the idea that religion is a fantasy?
Howdy, y'all. If you live in a Texas zip code and got 0 DUIs in 5 years, listen up. I was an...
Do you think those powers want billions of people to suddenly have physical proof of God's direct intervention in history? It's a geopolitical time bomb. It threatens the balance of global power. And what do powerful people do when they are threatened by an inconvenient truth? They don't debate it. They bury it. They make the problem disappear. This is where the story gets its most urgent. This is where it gets chilling. The evidence is vanishing. Let's talk about that golden chariot wheel that Ron Wyatt claimed he found. He said it was a 4-spoke wheel, the kind used only by the highest royalty, maybe the pharaoh himself. He claimed he brought it to the surface, documented it, and that its existence was reported to the Egyptian authorities, thinking they would be ecstatic. And then, poof, it vanished. There are no official photos. There is no museum record, no...
See that devil pop up there? Hold on. Right here. Yeah. That's what happened to it.
And then, poof, it vanished. There are no official photos. There is no museum record, no official statement. The one piece of smoking gun proof that could have verified the entire story is gone. Skeptics, the same frozen experts, laugh and say, see, he made it all up. It never existed. But what if he didn't?
Listen to this.
What if it was confiscated? What if it was taken and buried in a deep, dark vault? A place like the warehouse at the end of Indiana Jones. A secret so explosive it can never be allowed to see the light of day? It gets worse, much worse. The new 2024 expedition, comparing their new high-tech, high-resolution sonar maps to Wyatt's original maps and photos from the 70s and 80s, has reported something deeply disturbing. Large sections of the debris field, they seem to have been altered, cleared. Areas that Wyatt claimed were dense with artifacts, places he labeled chariot parts and skeletal remains, are now suspiciously barren. Is this just natural erosion? Is it just the currents of the Red Sea which have been flowing for 3,500 years? Or is it a cleanup operation? The new team has reported seeing drag marks on the seafloor. Marks that look like massive objects were hooked and pulled away. This isn't nature. This is surgical. Is it possible that in the 40 years since Wyatt first found it, someone has been slowly, quietly, and systematically removing the evidence, erasing the history from the bottom of the sea? We are in a race against time. The site is incredibly fragile. The coral fossils, the human and horse remains encased in mineral deposits, are being eroded by currents. But the human element, that is the real threat. The experts are frozen because they are standing on the edge of a cliff. Behind them is their entire life's work, their reputation, their comfortable, established world. In front of them is a dark, deep gulf, full of impossible evidence. Evidence that threatens to pull them and all of established history under. And while they stand there, silent and paralyzed, the shadows are moving. The evidence is disappearing. The truth isn't just being ignored, it's being actively and methodically destroyed. So is this the world's greatest archaeological find or a massive 40-year-old hoax? And if it's real, who is so desperate to erase it? Let us know what you think in the comments. Don't forget.
There you go. Who is so desperate? I wonder who would be so... Who would benefit? That's the question you have to ask. All right. Who benefits? All right. Like I said, this is a big faith booster. All right. Not that we absolutely needed it, but hey, it helps. All right. You can see this goes with this devil being pulled down out of power. All right. This goes to show the character or lack thereof of the people that are over us. Lies upon lies upon lies, and they're trying to protect those lies. All right. But we know at the end of the day, it's all going to fail. All right. That's why videos like this, yeah, they're beautiful. All right. So with that, I hope whoever views this, as usual, has been edified. That's why we do these videos, all right, and upload them, and they go out across the, the four corners, all right, because this is all done, as I said in my opening, all right, and then waking up the remaining hopeful elect, all right. So with that, once again, I'd like to remind you to also keep your head on a swivel out here, all right, because things are only going to get much, much worse. You see it in the news every day, all right. Something else is coming, someone else is running their mouth from, this current administration that's, in the White House now. So, and other things going on around the world, things that they're trying to keep silent, like what's going on with the Muslim population in the United States. You see, you're hearing this Epstein shit, and it's really a distraction. All right, that's why I said, remain circumspect. All right, at the end of all my videos. So with that, hey, until the next video, hey, shalom.